Let's take a look at how to treat variables as numbers, as how to look at numeric data. There are three basic ways to do integer arithmetic. They're all equivalent. And the most general one is expr. So you can use the let command, or you can use shell expansion. And these are examples of, this is an example of shell expansion. And probably the most versatile way is to use the expr command. And you can actually check the man page for expr. So you can say man expr. You should see a whole bunch of information about this command. Okay, so what are we doing here? We're just trying to do things like add, subtract, multiply, divide, those kinds of things. That is integer arithmetic. So remember that the values of all shell variables are strings. So even if you say x equal 5, that's treated as the string 5, not as the number 5. There is a difference, of course, and in computer science we tend to recognize those differences. The way we use strings basically determine how they're converted, or how they're treated. So when we use expr, we actually essentially convert these strings to integers and then perform the arithmetic, and the result is actually converted back to strings for storage. So when we add two numbers, what we're doing is we're converting each of those numbers from strings to numbers. We're converting each of those strings from strings to numbers, and then we add them together, and that result, which is a number, is converted back to a string to be stored into some other variable. What kinds of things can we do? All the usual things. You can have minus, that is minus, like minus 5 or minus 10, or plus 5 or plus 10. That's the unary minus. You also have the subtraction operator. That's 10 minus 5 or 10 minus 3 is equal to 7, whatever. You also have exponentiation, which you do not have in most programming languages. So this is x to the power y. So if you had 5 star star 2, that should evaluate to 25. You also have multiply, divide, remainder, or the modulo operator. You have subtraction, addition and subtraction. You have these bitwise left shifts, which we will use actually. I'll talk more about that later. You need to know about how numbers are represented as bits to be able to use this effectively. You also have less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, and this is how you check for not equal to. You can also use the logical not operator and say exclamation equal to, and that's considered the same as not equal to. I think most of the time this is preferred, but I think, well, yeah, okay. There's bitwise and or operators, and we haven't really talked about that so much. There's the usual things like plus equals, which we have in Java, and C++ and C. And then all the other combinations, minus equals, star equals, divide equals, and so on. So you might want to print out this particular slide. Keep this handy so that you know what the different operators are. Okay, so unfortunately, shells have their own expression syntax rules. So what are expressions? Expressions are statements which are composed of constants, variables, operators, and sub-expressions too. So usually expressions evaluate to one result, a single result value. An expression can be a string, a number, or a logical value like true false. In bash and sh, arithmetic expressions are evaluated using the expr command. So for example, if you want to add x plus 2 and store it in y, this is how you do it. Unfortunately, we can't just say y is equal to x plus 2. No, that would be too easy. So in bash you have to say y equals, and this is the backtick operator, and this is still allowed, although I would recommend that you stay away from this just because it's a little bit unreadable. You can use the dollar open parentheses. That's works a whole lot better. So let me just go back up a couple of pages. Use this syntax: dollar, open parenthesis, and then expr, and your expression. That's a lot better than this, just because this is unreadable. So first of all, what is this character backtick? This is right below the escape key. On my keyboard, it's in the upper left corner, and I think that's probably where it'll be for you too. So this is different from the single quote mark. So the single quote is on right by the return or enter button on your keyboard. It's on the right hand side of your keyboard, the single quote. This is not single quote, this is called the backtick. So make sure you know the difference. Okay, so like we said before, you can also use the let operator, and this is fine too. This is not, it's readable, I would say. And the main thing here is which of these are most readable. And you can use let y is equal to $x plus 4. Here you have to worry that you have to be careful that you should not have spaces. And that's one thing that can introduce a lot of bugs. People forget that you should not have spaces. You put in spaces and nothing works. And Bash is notorious for not giving you a whole lot of feedback about what is wrong. You have to figure it out by carefully staring at your program. So once again, over here you want spaces, otherwise it won't work. Here you don't want spaces. If you put in spaces, things just don't work. Another thing that's wrong with let is if you want to use parentheses to group things, for example, you want to say x plus 4 times 3, you can't just say $x plus 4 times 3 because the 4 and the 3 get multiplied, so you want to have parentheses. But then if you use let, you need to have these slashes, these backslashes, to protect the parentheses, open and close parentheses. Okay, so you have all the usual operators, parentheses, we saw the whole table, unary, minus, remainder, divide, multiply, subtraction, addition, and the usual kinds of precedence rules. Okay. So to sum up, expr is an expression evaluator, and it handles numbers, Boolean expressions, or strings. So it handles strings too. We've been looking so far mainly at numeric, that is numbers, but it'll also handle strings. Let's take a look at basic number, basic numeric, a few numeric examples. So if you want to add, for example, two numbers, 7 plus 5, you just say expr 7 plus 5, and you can probably run this right in your shell prompt. So expr space 7 plus 5. This gives you 12. Let me just check and see what happens if we don't have spaces. Ooh, see that? So you want to have spaces when you use expr. Let's see, 7 minus 5, 2. Let's try to get a negative number, 7 minus 10. Great, worked. Okay, let's try multiply expr 7. Here you can get the idea that you might have a problem because star is always used as a wildcard. So it will match all of the files in the current folder. So I have a feeling this will not work. So if you try to multiply expr 7 times 5, I have a feeling, I don't have a good feeling about this. I'm thinking this won't work. Yep. The reason you get this syntax error is not because you typed in something wrong here, but the bash shell is treating this as a wildcard character, which means all of the current files in the current directory will match and be inserted into this command. So to avoid that, you need to protect the star and now you get the right answer. And I have a feeling if you use this in an expression, this will work. You can try it, and if you run into problems, of course, all you have to do is use this instead. So I think if you're setting up a script and you're saying echo dollar open left parenthesis expr 7 star 5 close right paren and run that, it should work without the slash. What else can we do? Yeah, expr 7 divided by 5. Remember, this is integer arithmetic, so that's why you get 1 and not 1.2 or whatever. Let's try expr modulo or remainder, 7 modulo 5, and that's right. So 5 modulo 5 is 0, 6 modulo 5 is 1, 7 modulo 5 is 2. Okay. So you can try out these things. Let's say we have a variable I is equal to 5 and we want to increment. How can we increment this variable? Well, basically we need to use one of these ways, one of these 3 ways of adding 1 to it. So you want to basically say I is equal to I plus 1. So you can say I is equal to, let I equals I plus 1. That'll work. So remember, no spaces over here. You can also use the expression, you can with the backtick, but remember it's probably better. Let's just try this out. So, okay. So let I equals 5, echo $I is 5. Good. Now you want to say I equals backtick expr space $I, so I'm going to get the current value of I, add 1 to it because I'm using expr, and then end the expression with a close backtick. Now if I echo $I, should get 6. Good. I can use the let operator. So remember, the backtick is fine. I think it's better, more readable, to use the dollar left paren expr dollar, and then everything else is almost the same. Plus 1, a close parenthesis, echo $I should give me 7. Good. You can also use let I equals I plus 1. This is nice, but if you have something a little bit more complicated, it's pretty clunky. Okay, that worked. You can also say I is equal to dollar open left paren $I plus 1, and then we say echo I, it's 9. Great. Okay, so all of these ways to increment the value of I, these things are very fragile in the sense that if you add in space over here or a space over here, this whole thing breaks. You have to have, and if you omit spaces in some other commands, that breaks too. So we have to deal with that when you write bash programs. It's very easy to get syntax errors. Very easy. It's also the hard part is just that sometimes things work and you don't know why they work, because they look like they shouldn't work. And then of course the harder thing is when you think they should work and it doesn't work because of some syntax error. Okay, so let's take a break and then we'll move on to logical expressions.